2023. Overall, we had adopted a budget for fiscal year 23 that was projecting a $5 million deficit. With this third quarter report, we're now expecting a $2.8 million surplus overall. Starting with the general fund, through the third quarter, we have collected approximately 124% of our planned revenues, and we have only spent 54% of our planned expenditures. What you'll see after this is going to be our utility fund and then capital funds. The full report is part of the agenda packet and will be posted online. Going to the utility fund, through the end of June, we've collected 54% of our projected revenues, and we've only expended 36% of our planned expenditures. It is important to note, though, that for the utility fund, the vast majority of our revenues and expenditures occur during those hot summer months. And if anybody was in town last month, you know that we were very hot through the month of August, so I expect the revenues and expenditures to finish the year significantly up from what you're seeing now. And then the capital funds, this is a combination of 3 capital funds that comprise the municipal and the academy capital expenditures. The big change from what was adopted for fiscal year 23 is directly related to the $3.5 million tax note issuance for the modular buildings and the additional expenditures necessary to outfit those buildings. The other part of your quarterly report that is included in the packet outside of the general fund financials has to do with the PFIA required investment report. Through the end of June, we are up significantly on investment earnings. That has to do through June 30th entirely with the Fed raising the rates continually. If you'll recall, in June, the council voted to participate in the Texas class risk pool. We actually funded that mechanism in the fourth quarter, so you won't see any of those earnings until our last quarterly report. Additionally, for debt payments, we do all of those twice a year, once in February, once in August. The debt payments that are made in February include the principal and interest payments, and then the last bit of debt payments will occur every year in August, and those are interest only. So for the debt service funds, the vast majority of those activities have already occurred through the third quarter. All right, and then just to follow up on next steps, this again is only through the third quarter. You'll see an unaudited draft report back in November to give you your first glance at how we finished the fiscal year of 23. Also, additionally, next month, what we'll bring forward to this body for consideration is a formal budget amendment. So a budget amendment, the intent there is to actually codify any necessary changes in revenues or expenditures that happen throughout the year. A good example for fiscal year 23 has to do with those significantly larger than expected revenues that we'll want to amend for and adjust the budget prior to going through the audit for fiscal year 23. Do y'all have any questions on the quarterly report?
Yeah, Casey, real quick. I don't remember. I knew we really swung this deficit to a positive. I never heard a number. Do we feel good about that $2.8 million as we close out the year?
We feel good about the $2.8 million through June 30th. I expect that to be a little bigger through the end of the fiscal year.
So there's some upside to it.
Yes, sir.
Downside. Thank you.
For next year, is there a way we can kind of give some of the money back to the people here in terms of maybe enhancing our town deduction for, I think it's $400,000 or something like that for each home? Maybe the allotment for increasing that as a way of reimbursing people?
We're legally capped with the homestead exemption. We can only go up as much as we're currently at, which is that 20%. But we can explore other opportunities. For exemptions, we're already at the legal cap? Yes, in the state.
You talk about the property tax reduction?
Yeah, no, I'm talking for the exemption.
Specifically with exemptions?
Yeah, on the exemption piece, there's like a $400,000 exemption.
So if you're talking about the exemption that was recently passed through the legislature this current year that will go into effect, that's on the school district side, not on the municipal tax side.
No, I'm talking for the town of Westlake. And the town of Westlake has like $200,000, whatever it is, $150,000 is the exemption, and then after that the tax starts. And every county has exemptions, everyone has exemptions. There's no way of increasing it, so that
Yes, sir. That is the homestead exemption that she's talking about. Yes, sir. And we are at the
Municipalities
maximum
are
value.
on a percentage basis with a minimum of $5,000.
Yeah, I actually have a question.
Okay?
So in the overview here, so we had projected at the beginning of the year a use of fund balance or a depletion of fund balance of about $5 million. You said projected revenue is 27, projected expenditures of 33. When you come down to the general fund, I think this is something I keep struggling with whenever we get into these conversations. You're showing a general fund balance surplus of 2.8 million, and that's based on this projected revenue of 17.2 million, less the projected expenditures of 14.38, which appears separate from the consolidated 27 and 33.
Correct.
So how are we projecting 2.8, and how does that relate to the consolidated set of accounts?
So this is just a portion of it. For the quarterly report, we focus on the major funds. The actual backup is an appendices to the investment or the quarterly report itself.
So what are we expecting on a consolidated basis, the true surplus to be for the town?
Off the top of my head, as of Q3, I'll have to get that number back for you.
Okay. I do have a question on the, yeah, it looks like it's general fund again. Under the expenditure summary, I mean, there's a comment here about the finance department being over budget,
Yes, sir.
and this relates to contract staffing. So my understanding was that this outsourcing of the finance department had ceased.
Correct.
So why is this still considered to be over budget for the finance department?
It was over budget before, just from the overuse of those consultants for the first 6 months of the fiscal year.
For the first 6 months? Okay.
We discontinued one of them in March. The next one was discontinued in May, and the last one has been discontinued as of July 4th. And that was just to have them wrap up the projects that they were working on for us.
Okay. My other question, because this, again, is going to relate to our budget discussion, which is coming up here in a minute. You talk about the transfers out of general fund, and you consider it to be a cost center here. And you say that it's lower than expected activity due to limited CapEx. Are these transfer outs, I mean, again, are these wiped out on a consolidated basis? And I will ask the question again later. Or are these considered true expenditures across the board for the year?
So it's a little bit of both. For
Okay.
governmental accounting, the metaphor that I always like to use, if you have a savings account and a checking account, and you transfer $25 from one to the other, one of those will show a decrease of $25 and the other will show an increase.
No, I understand. For the purposes of the general fund, when you talk about the transfer cost center, are these true expenditures of the general fund?
No, these are going to be true expenditures in a different fund. The transfers out will balance with the transfers in for the other fund.
Okay, but
And
they will
on
be
a
expensed through some other fund during the course of the year.
for whatever purpose they were
We'll
earmarked
definitely
for.
revisit this on the budget, I think,
Okay.
'cause it becomes more applicable.
Do we have any other questions? Thank y'all so much.
Move on to F2, 23-240, presentation discussion, state assessment results for 2023. Maxwell and Rod.
You can hit the next slide. Hi, Council. And so Mr. Harding and I will review the 2022-2023 EO STAR and EOC results for this past academic school year. To start, I just wanted to give you all a brief overview of how the STAR assessments are scored, and then also the most recent STAR redesign that we had this past school year. So there are some brief changes that they implemented. HB 4545 has now changed to HB 1416. I'm short. HB 4545 has now changed to HB 1416 for accelerated instruction. So the state revised for the standards for what districts need to implement for students who do not pass a STAR or EOC assessment. So before, accelerated instruction was 30 hours that were needed for students. Now it's cut back to 15. The previous ratio was 3-to-1 for working unless there's a waiver. And that ratio has now increased from 4-to-1. Approaches, meets, and masters still remains the same, as there was a STAR redesign in terms of the growth measures. If a student got limited growth expected or accelerated, that would be implemented next school year. So we don't have those results now. So for the STAR redesign, there were some changes that were implemented. You now have cross-curricular passages, so making sure that subjects, something that's learned in history, can be overlapping in a social studies examination. So actually providing meaningful passages for students. Another thing is writing in all of the reading language arts assessments. It's no longer in just English 1 and English 2. There is some writing component in all of the English tests. And there's also now a cap for the number of multiple choice assessments that are given to students. Before, with the exception of English 1 and English 2, it would be 100% multiple choice. That's now capped out at 75%. And also, all assessments are now online, in which Westlake, we were ahead of the curve in moving to online last year. And looking at this slide, the next two slides just show the different type of question types that were now added to the STAR assessments, and the exams that you can see them in. So you see here, like text entry, we see that that's been implemented for mathematics in grades 3 through 8 and all EOCs, as well as reading language arts and science examination. So I just wanted to update you all that there was a revision to the STAR. Mr. Harding.
Can you hear me? Okay. I'm going to go over the STAR grade 3 to 5 results. As you can see that the pass rate for grade 3, and you have to remember that these children are the first users of the STAR examination, so it's very strange to them, even though we've had many trials and helping the children to understand what they have to do. When it's on the computer, it gets very difficult with children who have attention issues throughout the testing, and the testing may last for a long time. So therefore, it reduces in the aptitude and the determination of the child. So when we go to the next, sorry, I have this clicker. In the longitudinal data, we are at master's level of 48%. And that's very good for the grade 3s coming in. Very, very good. And in the math, we are holding at 43%. So that master level compares very, very favourably to the state and regional scores. And we'll get into that later in the presentation.
Mr. Harding, can I just ask a brief question? So, I mean, having looked at this data in advance, and I don't want to interrupt you going through this, a lot of the test reports are actually really good. The test scores are generally very, very good. There's just only a few anomalies, and this just happens to be one of them, which is why I just wanted to pause for a minute. The 48% and the 43% mastery is higher than the state averages. But in terms of performance at Westlake Academy, they are anomalies. And I was wondering if you could just give us a little insight into kind of your reading of these results, and just what you think the plan of action would be to try to address something like this, how concerned you would be, that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm. You mean from the 62% to the 48?
Yeah, exactly. And obviously the 35 to the 43 is an improvement, but it is still, compared to other grades and other subjects, it is lower.
Okay. And so is science.
Right, correct.
Right.
Exactly.
What I can tell you is that the person Mrs. DeMoss, who does the reading at school, and also, I won't get onto the math at the moment, but the reading, her time was shared during last year with the HB 4545. For those people who did not, those children who did not meet the standard, she was occupied with the accelerated instruction with that. Along with that, Mrs. DeMoss spent her time with small groups and helping them with reading. So her time was taken away, and I think that's part of the reason. The other reason is that this year, and that's later on in the discussion, we are not getting Mrs. DeMoss or the maths specialist to take on the HB 45 for those that did not meet with that accelerated instruction. We're handing that over to the grade 4 and 5 teachers this year. So that's going to create a situation where it's going to be better use of her time to concentrate on the alignment of the TEKS from grade 3, 4 and 5. That was a definite area that we needed to change, and we did for this year.
Make sure I understand. So Mrs. DeMoss was pulled away. There's only so many hours in a day. She was pulled away. You've now corrected that, and you think that will fix it.
Yes, we have. And that was the feeling of the staff.
Good.
And I think throughout the year that was the feeling, that how can we do all this? How can we make sure that one day of the test, and we did have preliminary tests, but we weren't sure what the result would be. We needed to pull the reading specialist and the maths specialist away from that position, and we have. So we should see a rise in those results.
Are we going to cause other issues having these other teachers take on some of these responsibilities?
No, it's 30 hours for the duration of the time, and it's about 30 to 40 minutes after school or before school. So they would be tutoring those children as well.
So you feel okay about
that? Yeah, we feel okay with that.
Okay, thanks.
Right? So while the math in grade 4, the math in grade 3 has improved slightly, if there's no further questions, I'll go on to the grade 4 results. Again, we have 97% pass rate, and when you turn over to, sorry, I'm not used to this. Usually have someone clicking it for me.
I'm happy to help if you need.
Come out here. The grade 4 longitudinal study, 65% in reading was mastered. So we're gradually moving that scale up as we go through the classes and the grades. In math, 59%, that is an increase as well. And for last year, the writing component was given. That component is now integrated into the reading component. So the children have a dual role when they take the reading exam. And I'm going to get into that in a moment about that. Our longitudinal data for grade 5. I'm going to hold this in my hand. Reading, 78% mastered. 78% mastered. And for math, a drop of 62%. And we would equate that with not only did the reading specialist have to do the accelerated instruction in House Bill 45, but the math STEM specialist had to do that as well. So for the same reasons, the grade 5 teachers and the rest of the teachers in grade 4 and 5 will be doing the accelerated instruction. So that now leaves the math specialist, STEM specialist, free to do that. I'm going to talk more about the science in a moment because the math specialist does the science as well. So she has a dual role. And the writing component, that is the first year that it's been done at Westlake Academy, and I'm going to talk about that in terms of that was 24%. And I know that the comparison between the state and region is less than that. But I'm not concerned about the state and region. I'm concerned about our school and can we improve on the results that we have. So in the writing, the component was added during the STAR last year, and it gave an extended constructive response essay, a literary response to a reading passage. So that was very different from what the children were doing when they were writing an essay. Completely different. They had another section to do as well, and that was 2 short constructed responses for or with text evidence on one, and then an edit and a rewrite on the other. So they were doing a lot of work within that reading component, and the idea was for that exam or that test was to link the writing to the reading, which they should have done, and they did. But we have to get used to that format with those children who are doing the writing. It's interesting that the state assesses math and reading, but they only get to writing in the grade 5 component. So that's a procedural thing with the format of the whole thing.
Can you just talk about the science?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I missed that.
No, it's okay.
Thank you, David. In August 22 to May 23, the STEM specialist taught science and also taught it every second week. And in the alternate week, supported teachers in the development and implementation of mathematics. So she's spread between a lot of things. So her concentration was on mathematics and also on HB 45. She tried to improve the curriculum alignment within and across grades. Additionally, the STEM specialist supported the teachers that did not meet, and I mentioned that about the House Bill 45. The STEM specialist in the PYP curriculum and the PYP curriculum coordinator provided workshops on the STAR redesign and the types of questions that would be introduced in the new STAR alignment of the test in May 23. So she was pulled in many, many directions during that year. To create that situation, in fall, we had, in 2022, we had the new STAR redesign where the math specialist was involved in that rather than science. And in May 23, the new TEKS came in. And that was done by the math specialist. So all of these instances were redirected by the STEM specialist who was a math and science specialist. Our action plan, and also it's interesting to note that 11%, 7 children, were new to Westlake Academy in grade 5. So that, again, that may have had an effect. Our action plan this year, as I said, the STEM specialist is separated, and she will concentrate on the science, and the targeted interventions will no longer take place by her, it'll take place by the grade 5s teachers. That'll free her completely up. If I look at the results in science, there are certain concepts or strands that are lacking. For instance, only 55% of the students in grade 5 were successful in matter and energy that were correct. In earth and space, 52% got it correct. And there are certain questions that were worse than the others, and we've made sure that we've separated those questions and we know which ones did well and which questions were not done so well, so we can concentrate on that. In force, energy and motion, 70% of the students in grade 5 got it correct or got corrected answers. In organisms and environment, 74% of students were at the correct answers to those questions. So our matter and energy and earth and space are areas that we need to work on, both in the classroom and within what is on offer at professional development.
Mr. Harding, I assume this evaluation was done at year end after the actual STAR results
Yes.
came out. So can we use testing earlier in the year to try?
We will. They're interim tests. Yes,
Okay.
we can.
Okay.
Yes. So one of the things that we will do with the science is look at what offerings are at Region 11 for professional development and workshops. And on September the 7th of this year, we sent the grade 3, 4 and 5 representatives at Matter and Energy. So we sent them for the workshop at Region 11. On September the 21st, Force, Energy and Motion was also looked at the region by sending one of the grade 3 teachers. So that will in turn come back and focus on what we need to improve and how we can improve on that. And then further to that, on October the 11th, we'll have someone go to Earth and Space, and that's one grade 3 teacher as well. And if our budget permits, we can send more. The STEM specialist now has the late start Wednesdays. So where she was concentrating with the HB45 and other times, she now is free on late start Wednesdays. So that's going to make a big difference. We have purchased STEM scopes, and that's a package that will create an aligned lot of questions and a question bank that reach lower to the grade areas from grade 5. So we're bringing it all through here. The last part of that is we had a personnel change at grade 5. And in 23, for the 23-24 school year. And the STEM specialist now is working with that person in grade 5 every lunchtime once a week. So she's working very well with that new teacher, and that's going positively.
Thank you very much for that. I was hoping when you were coming in here, you weren't just going to read the results out to us, but you were going to analyze them and tell us what we need to do to try to help wherever we can to improve this. So thanks for doing that.
Okay.
And then as always, if you need anything from a support standpoint from the council, let us know, please.
Okay. Thank you.
Ron.
Thank you, Ron.
All right, Maxwell.
So for the grade 6, we have the mathematics and the reading assessments. So there is an overall increase in both subject areas. And then the mastery for mathematics remained fairly the same, and there was a slight increase in the reading results for grade 6. For grade 7, as Mr. Harding noted, in 2021, that was the last writing assessment, as is now embedded in all the other reading assessments. But for grade 7, the students in that grade level, they all take the grade 8 mathematics STAR. They don't take the grade 7 STAR because they learn all of grade 7 TEKS and half of grade 8. It's categorized as pre-algebra, and in the 8th grade, they take algebra 1. So the results for that increased by 5%, and then there was a slight increase for the reading results in grade 7. And then also for reading, we can see that the mastery level remained around the same. There was an increase, and there was an increase in the mastery level for mathematics. For grade 8, we have and we'll get to algebra 1 on the next slide. So for grade 8, we have the reading, the science, the social studies, and also algebra 1. So they're taking 4 assessments that academic year. So the pass rate for, I wanted to talk about the reading. So the pass rate for the reading was in the 21-22 school year, and looking at that cohort, it was 94%, and the mastery rate was 65%. So although there is a difference in the pass rate, when we talk about that cohort specifically, they did perform at the same rate as they did the previous year. And we know each cohort is different from one to another. So I had looked deeper into it to see how they performed the previous year while they were in grade 7. For science, the approaches had dropped by 2%, but we can see that there was an increase in the overall mastery by 4% there. And then also the approaches for social studies remained the same. And then there was an increase in the mastery level for students in social studies.
Yeah, Mr. Itoa, can you just talk a little bit on the science? Again, the mastery level of 48 is an anomaly overall, and it's, comparable because we only have science being tested at grade 5, grade 8. So what are you seeing here, and what do you think is the right course of action?
With that, it's the vertical piece. So, as you noted, like in our reading assessments, they're taking STAR in grade 3 all the way through grade 10. Whereas with the science, they're broken up, and then the TEKS don't correspond from one year to the next. So that vertical alignment all the way from primary through secondary will be critical in terms of increasing the overall results in the area of science. Like that's the only way to resolve it.
Okay, but the 7th grade is under your purview,
Yes.
correct? Is 6, or is that?
Yes,
Yeah,
6,
so
7,
6,
and
7, and 8 is still the lead up.
Yes.
So what's the science?
So with science for the secondary, we do have the vertical alignment meetings all the way 6 through 12. So we have our DP coordinator, who's also the science department chair, and those teachers actually tomorrow, the 4th Wednesday of each month, they'll be getting together in order to have the vertical articulation for our students in order to see continued success.
Okay.
All right. Next, we have the results for the end of course assessments, the EOCs, and the students, in order to graduate, they have to pass the 5 end of course assessments. So the students take Algebra 1 in grade 8. In grade 9, they have English 1 and biology. In grade 10, they have English 2. And in grade 11, they have U.S. history. So there was an overall increase in the passing percentage for all of the EOCs approaches-wise. For English 1, there was an increase in the master's performance. For English 2, of course, there was an anomaly in which it was lower last year. There was an increase for grade 10. For Algebra 1, the mastery rate remained the same, around the same. For U.S. history, it did as well. And then for biology. So with biology, I want to provide context that teaching position, due to a last-minute hire being pulled out, it was vacant for the first 3 weeks of school. Then we had onboarding, so we didn't have a teacher teaching that class for the first 4 weeks of school, and then a brand new instructor at that. So that provides a little bit more context about that area. But then in speaking with the high school leadership, they've analyzed the lowest performing TEKS, and they'll be going in supporting the teacher through observations, providing feedback, also one-on-one meeting plans, and then also pairing with the DP coordinator and science department chair in order to review the standards that are needed in order to see improvement in the area of biology.
Yeah, because I think, looking at these grades on a whole, I mean, obviously the EOC results are fantastic, but there is a theme coming here on science, and it's that we're not mastering it. We're passing it well. It's generally in line with other subjects, but when it comes to mastery of any of the sciences, it's a struggle. And I'm just curious, how do we address that? And Dr. Owen, I assume grade 9 now falls under the high school, right? So, I don't know if you have anything else to add, but what are we doing specifically in the sciences to try to improve, the students' mastery of these subjects?
Yeah, I can speak to the high school. We can break down the TEKS and see the areas where these students have underperformed. And so in terms of designing the teaching, it can focus more on that. I think also in terms of the style of teaching, perhaps where we suffer a little bit in science is that it's really about applied knowledge. And sometimes with the sciences, there can be an approach where students are having a look at the content and the knowledge that they need, but when they actually get to an exam format and they have to apply it to something different, that's perhaps where we're falling a little bit short. We actually saw that with the science diploma exams as well, because we were a little bit lower in biology. So I think it's also supporting teachers not only in focusing on the TEKS, but actually in the way that they are teaching as well. So, for example, when we need to work more with applied knowledge, when working with teachers, when we do formative assessments, building up to the big exams, they should be designing formatives which actually mirror that applying of knowledge rather than, say, just multiple choice on factual-based knowledge. So I think those two things, having a look at the TEKS, but the teaching philosophy behind it, I think is important as well. We're also actually investing more money into labs as well. I think most science teachers, and certainly I would agree that the best way to learn science is actually sort of hands-on as well. We've been very fortunate with grants that we've got in the past for more scientific equipment. We've just put in a new grant for updated biology equipment as well. So greater access to labs, I think, should help too.
Okay, thanks.
And then Mr.
I'm back. I forgot two important things in my presentation, and that was to recognise Monica Pulis, who is a STEM teacher, who has done so much last year, and I know she put most of this together, and we talked about how we would move forward with all of the science. So I want to really stop and appreciate her very much, and it really goes to show that she's a quality person, and I know that she wants the best for the students, not only for the state testing, but also for their knowledge of science moving through the secondary school. I'm going to... I was going to drop. I just want to highlight with the comparison, and it's very marked. If you just look at the masters and you look at grade 3 reading, we are 28% better points, 28 percentage points better than the state. In the grade 4, in masters, we are 44% percentage points better. In grade 5 reading, we are 50 percentage points better than the state. When I go down all through this, it's the same, except for science. And we recognise that. We should not be 9% better than the state. So that's what I wanted to finish off with. I want all the board to know, and the teachers and the community, that we're working on science, and we'll give it our best shot for the benefit of all the children.
Thank you for acknowledging that.
Thank you. Thank you.
And the next two slides for secondary just show the pass rate and the pass rate for mastery for Westlake Academy in comparison to the state's pass rate for approaches, as well as the state's rate for mastery as well. So the next two slides, at your own leisure, you can take just a few seconds to just see the differences between how Westlake is performing in comparison to the state of Texas. Mr. Hardy.
Thank you. Sorry. While they are exceptional compared to state standards, I'll again repeat myself that we can do better as a school. I know that. And also we're committed to this improvement, and I keep on mentioning that all the time. We have some great educators in the primary years program and in the secondary years program. So Academy, I'm sure that you all know that the old adage is we want this place to be the best place for students to learn and teachers to teach. And we'll continue that vein. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. We're going to take a quick break here. We're supposed to do some student stuff at 5. People will be coming in here, and I don't think we have time to do the next presentation, so.